Hey folks, Valentin the Mad here, and today we'll be looking at the character responses in Madness Project Nexus. It's a game based on the Madness combat animation series and Gore's Effector 2, so let's see what we have and whether the game delivers a responsive experience. So first up, the head can be severed and destroyed. There's obliteration for a specific character, and characters can be cut in half. For heads, you can chop off the whole head, and there's also a slice point in the head itself that is pretty cool. And one more important detail is that when dismembering hits and when multi-layer damage is activated, you'll see chunks get spread around. Those will not disappear. So the aftermath for destroying a head, with the big chunks, with the little ones, all of those will stay, and that is something I would like to see more often in games. Not necessarily have them be permanent by default, but at least have an option for them to stay and not vanish in like 10 seconds. Another feature you can't miss is the multi-layer damage. Each character has a layer of insights that can be revealed during combat. That seems to be mapped all across the body. For this kind of a graphical style, the insights look nice. In my impression, it is a dynamic system rather than pre-made variations, and along with the chunks and the sounds when it's activated, it will deliver satisfying feedback. However, there are issues. Cutting in half will look a little weird. You will notice that, unlike the head stuff, it isn't quite right. Shotguns and even a 500 Magnum can cut in half. I think they should destroy heads, definitely punch holes in characters, but not really split in two. There is an issue of a skinning response in which the character loses pretty much the entire upper layer of the torso on the finishing hit. And for the simple melee weapons, big mutilation will be activated very rarely, for just about anything other than a weapon throw. The rare activation, of course, was done to make the fancier weapons, like the katana or the big boss cleaver, feel more powerful. However, I do think that activating stuff like beheadings or the multi-layer damage on a fatal hit, if it was a charge attack, would be appropriate, and it would make those feel a lot more satisfying. And you also have the regular wounds. Those will be a blood pattern on the character and they'll largely appear at the point of impact. Nothing too fancy, but when they work, they will deliver basic feedback. As you can see though, we have some issues. There are times when they seemingly won't appear, or when they'll appear at the wrong spot. I've seen a similar issue with the multi-layer damage too. Now, in the heat of an intense battle, it's not something you'll see very clearly right in your eyes, but those instances when the response for a hit just doesn't feel quite right, they won't be uncommon, and that's basically why. Now, there are several cool touches. I've seen a mask fly off a character after a hit. You will see blood on your shoes after going through blood pools. And while the body damage for it is not hugely amazing, I really dig the rolling animations for burning characters. I should also mention that there are bullet spongy enemies in boss fights. For those, even the multi-layer damage doesn't make that kind of a fight responsive, and it still is just repeated bashing or shooting a large character. Theoretically, multi-layer damage should deliver that feel of slowly tearing apart a large enemy, but in this game, even though you will see holes in them, it doesn't deliver that feel. And I think the key reasons for that are the activation issues I mentioned earlier. So, you often won't see that hole appear exactly where it should, at the spot where it hit the enemy, and they do have really big health bars. You would need more visual damage than this to really make a fight with that kind of a big character be responsive. As for the blood spilling, you have response stains on impact, larger stains on several specific instances, blood pools below red characters, and bloody footsteps after going through a blood pool. As for the good, the mechanics are consistent. Stains will appear when they should, chunks will spread on the environment, and the mess is configurable. As for the latter, the result speaks for itself. Also, a small but very cool touch is that the bloody footsteps will fade out as you walk. But there is one major issue that you may have noticed, and that is the splashes and stains are not proportional. At all, not even close. You'll see pretty huge splashes and spurts, those will activate stains, but the stains are small drops. Lots of splashing, blood fountains, but as soon as the splashing is gone and you have the result, it feels quite underwhelming. And that's a shame, because you do have a consistent blood pool mechanic, the persistent bits and pieces are just awesome, and the only thing that's really missing for a decent response is something proper for those initial hits and fountains. As for the animations, there's nothing too fancy, but the basic response you have is good. Animations when a character is hit, short animations on death, exaggerated ragdolls, and a stun state that you can use for a takedown. You know, what kind of stood out to me out of all of those is actually the exaggerated ragdoll. It can be very over the top, but it's not weightless, and I do appreciate that. In conclusion, without the wound issues and some oddities, the body damage would deliver solid and sometimes even great feedback for the style. The aftermath can be very nice, and for regular enemies, the animations absolutely get the job done. The biggest issues are all the blood spilling, splash to stain stuff, and there are some mainly bullet spongy enemies that are not really fun to fight against. So, aside for the animated series stuff, can I recommend it just for plain, visceral Gore combat? I think there's definitely fun to be had there, but it's not quite it. So, that's it for today. Do let me know how you feel in the comment section, and if you enjoyed the video, subscribe and share it around. And consider supporting the channel on Patreon. For $1 a month you get these videos a week early, you get the interviews a week early, and you help out the channel. So a big thank you to all the Patreon members, and consider joining as well. Also, if you like the music you hear in the intro, outro, and in the background, the YouTube and Spotify playlists are in the description. Until next time.